Welcome to episode 6 of Now for Someone Completely Interesting. My name is Ben Poulin. Now, when I started this podcast, my goal was to sit down with people I knew and have them tell me their stories that I found interesting, and I wanted to share them. And eventually, I wanted to expand to meeting new people and hear some stories that were new to me. And to my pleasant surprise, that aspect of the show has now officially become a reality. My sister Melanie strongly suggested that I reach out to the family of my next guest. She not only felt that his story was completely interesting, but important, especially since it's resulted in a campaign that has helped many people. The campaign is called Second Chance Trail Ride, and we will talk about that a little bit later on. But first, one of the founders of this organization, Morris Irvine, not only responded to my request to join me on this podcast, but has graciously invited me into his home in beautiful downtown Limburg, Alberta. Morris, thank you so much for having me in your house and to sit down and share your story with us today. Okay, so co-founder of Second Chance Trail Ride, I guess what essentially led to that was you yourself had a double lung transplant. So I guess let's start there. What led to that?
I had COPD, and I got so that I was on oxygen, and then I had to go to a specialist or whatever, and he sent me to the lung doctors, which they told me that I'd have to have a lung transplant. So in 2011, March 13th, I received a phone call, and the phone call came at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it was the University of Alberta. And the woman on the end of the phone said, "I have 2 lungs." And first of all, I asked my name, but I told her. And it just hit me, bang. I just didn't say nothing. And she finally asked me again, "Do you want these 2 lungs?" And I said, yes. I received the 2, or anyway, she said, "Can you be here in 3 hours?" I said, "Well, that's pretty tough, maybe 4. So we went into Edmonton and went through emergency and upstairs where they got me ready for the operation, and then they talk about a dry run. So nothing happened until 9 o'clock the next morning. All of a sudden they come along and they wheeled me to the operating room, and I had an operation where I received lungs. And from there on, it was uphill grade for me. I was laying there in the intensive care unit when I realized that I had no tubes in my nose. And I took a smaller breath, and then I took a larger breath, and I took a deep breath, and I had no pressure on my chest whatsoever. And I could breathe. Coming from where you couldn't breathe to where you could breathe was a miracle. From then on, I went to physio and so on and so forth, and continued physio until we were in the physio room, and they had transplant games in Calgary, and they were short of money for the transplant games. So my wife and I were sitting on the bed there waiting for a treadmill, because they were short treadmills because they needed treadmills. So we're sitting there, and I said, "How could we give it back?" And she said, "We still got horses, why don't we have a trail ride?" So we come home and organized a trail ride, and we had a trail ride, and we raised $25,000 for the transplant games in Calgary, which helped them out, and we had money left over to start a trail ride for the next year. The big thing with the transplant is how much money it costs you in the city, because you're trying to look after 2 homes plus your needs in the city, which adds up. I'm sure that it costs us over $30,000 when we ever added it up, because my family from all sides helped.
How long were you in the hospital for when you had the transplant? Like, just to give people an idea, like how straining this could be financially when you can't work, and you're, like you said, you're basically living in 2 places in a sense.
I was in intensive care for 17 days, and then I was in the city for 3 months.
Okay.
So we had to rent an apartment for 3 months, in which we had to drive. And my daughter, Sheila, she drove us every day and made sure we got there. And of course, the other girls exchanged with her too. The whole family was there to help, which I just can not more than thank them for that.
Mm-hmm.
And as time went on or whatever, and we got back home here, we got together with. Well, first of all, I got together with Harvey Nelson at the hospital because he was in need of a transplant, and he was in boot camp when I was going through my operation.
Right.
So anyway, him and I talked about it during coffee or whatever, and he thought it was a good idea to have a trail ride. And when I got back out, there was Glenn and Judy and Diane, can't think of their last name. Huh? Diane Brown. Who am I leaving out? Tom. Tom
just to give a
Matthews.
little idea here, Morris's wife Faye is prompting him there, and I was just been told after 55 years of marriage that she. I love it. Thank you guys so much. Sorry, continue. I didn't mean to interrupt there.
Anyway, they become part of the group, and Tom was my mentor. Oh, I got to tell him about that because Tom was my mentor before I went to the hospital.
Okay.
And it was Reverend Sam Donaldson. I phoned because I wasn't sure whether it was a good idea or, was anything in the Bible that said you should have a transplant or you shouldn't or whatever. So I phoned Sam, and Sam was at St. Vincent Lake, so he said, I'll be right over. He said, I'm going to bring this Tom Matthews. He did a double lung transplant here not very long ago, he said. So they both come, and we had a visit, and Tom became my mentor. He was my mentor right up until I went to the hospital.
So when you have this mentor like this, because I can just imagine there's obviously, right around the same time, actually, I had shoulder surgery myself, and which is fairly minor in comparison, but there's a big consultation with the doctor of the risks involved with every surgery. So we're talking about something extremely huge in comparison. So when they start going through that, do you weigh that option? Is it worth it or not? Or how does that go through your mind? And is that something your mentor kind of guides you through?
Well, you have a 50-50 chance either way. It's you know that if you keep going the way you are, your chances aren't very, very good. And if you get a lung transplant, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But like for myself, I wasn't scared. I just, after I talked to Tom and seen what he was doing, the fear left me.
Right.
And so I just wasn't scared of it all the way through. Even when they took me down to the operating room, I just felt good. I just felt like this is going to work.
Right.
And that's the way it was the whole way through. I think I was pretty lucky. I had my family around and they were there, and I'm pretty determined anyway. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I got.
Now, this is a bit of a tough one. I don't really know if you can answer it or not. We all know the story. We just had I believe the second anniversary of the Humboldt bus crash, and they talk about how one of those young players was an organ donor. He passed away as a result of the crash, but his willingness to, he saved 6 lives. So we know who he is, and we know a little bit about the impact that his tragedy had in a positive way, if you can put it that way. Do you know anything, or did you ever meet any of the family of the person you received the lungs from, or what do you know about that situation?
I had to write a letter of thanks, which I'm very thankful for, to the parents or family. And I received a letter back from the family, and they told me that he was a fisherman and a hunter and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I know about him. I just know that he was active and stuff, and I don't really know what happened to him.
Right. And that's fair. And like I said, this is kind of new territory for me, so I'm just kind of asking. Now, do you know if the family knows what you've been doing here the last 10 years with the Second Chance Trail Ride, and how you've been? Because I think that's a really important way that you've paid tribute and shown your gratitude there. And is that something you can answer?
I don't know whether they do, but with all the information out there, it's quite possible they do know.
Mm-hmm.
But they, like, maybe they don't feel like letting me know or whatever.
Right.
What they're thinking. So.
But in any case, like I said, hopefully it's out there, and I think, yeah, there couldn't be a more fitting tribute to continually give back. So let's talk a little bit about that. So the Second Chance Trail Ride, you started not long after you received the transplant to try to give back and raise money and of course awareness and everything like that. You did mention there, because you had the horses and the wagons, that you decided this was the avenue you were going. So basically, on Saturday, May 8th, you guys are going to be making a convoy, I guess, of horseback riders and wagons, and you're going to go Limburg to Elk Point. Talk a little bit about why you decided that would be something to use as a promotion, or why you decided that was
well, it's like raising it's a donation, actually. Your rider fee or your wagon fee is a donation that helps other people, like helps people in Edmonton going through the transplant, because there's a lot of people that it's really tough on them, that they just can't have a transplant because they haven't got the funds to do it. So we try to help with the Galen Lofts, with Good Hearts,
mm-hmm.
with rooms, and we also help with helping with parking, with credit, or not credit card, but Visa cards.
Right.
Because some people can't have money, but you can give them a credit card. They'll help them get their hair done, or their
mm-hmm.
something they need besides what they're getting for pension or whatever.
We talk about the awareness and everything like that too, and something you mentioned here, and I think it relates. You talk about Tom was your mentor, but you yourself now have kind of paid that forward as well. You know how helpful he was to you in you going through the process. Over the last 10 years, how many people have you been involved with?
I've helped 4 people.
Wow.
And I'm dealing with one in Calgary right now. And it's just the same thing. Everybody's scared, and it's a big undertaking. Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot of, do I sell this? Do I have to sell this or whatever? Because they tell you, if you read the book or whatever, they tell you got to sell your house. No, you don't. You can work it out. There's people that will help you.
Right.
And that's what we're here for.
And I was going to say, and there's the organization like this, Second Chance Trail Ride. Now, you said the first year you had it, with minimal time to organize, you guys raised $25,000.
$25,000.
How has it grown since then for you?
It's grown up to 85,000
per year.
Per year.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Awesome.
And we've helped Good Hearts out with a percentage or whatever, and a percentage goes to mm-hmm. people with $1,000 or whatever going through the transplant. $1,000 doesn't sound like much, but when you're in there, $1,000 can go a long ways.
Right. Incredible. So in addition to this, I mean, the awareness and everything is growing too. Now there's a big event that's being now tagged on to this as a fundraiser. I don't know if it's going to end up being an annual event itself. It's called Tunes and Tailgates. So Saturday evening, May 8th, there is a drive-in concert with Canadian country music singer Aaron Pritchett, who's going to be headlining, and they've got a few acts there. But if my understanding is correct, there's a little bit of story and that links with that. He's actually written a song that kind of relates to this whole experience that you've had.
Yes. Last year we had a virtual ride from Limburg to not quite to Elk Point or nothing. But we had a virtual ride, and this woman and her husband rode with me on my wagon. And of course, she's friends with my daughter, but not knowing, but she wrote a song.
Okay.
And she wrote this song, and she got together with Ray Muscle, and they went over the song and redid it. And anyway, it starts with the idea of my phone call. And surprise.
Right.
And about what I think about my donor. Doesn't matter, when I wake up in the morning, I think of my donor every day, and I thank him every day for being able to do the things and be around my family and grandkids, and being able to go out and drive my horses and just being able to do what I can do. It's great.
Awesome. Hey, I know you're, it's an emotional thing. Thank you so much for doing that. We've talked about the trail ride, the concert coming up, and just so people are aware, it's probably easiest just to direct them to the website. Correct me if I'm wrong, www.secondctr.com. That's the number 2, ndctr.com. I'm going to put that in the episode notes here as well, if people want to click on the link, find out more. This has been probably, I don't know, I think this is the most important podcast I've done so far, and I'm so glad my sister recommended it. I was nervous, to be honest, and we've never met before, so I just to see how it went, and I'm really grateful that you agreed to do this and invite me in and be a part of that. Morris Irvine, someone completely interesting. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap things up here? I like how he looks at his wife, hey.
Sign your donor card.
Thank you so much. I didn't even think of that, but I do know when I got my driver's license renewed, I did sign mine too, so I'm already on board. Thank you so much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure.